Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Community America Credit Union. My name is Joel Goldberg, and just rolling along here on season 6. It was great to have that little break in April and got baseball season going. And now, as we're recording this episode, we're into June. Baseball's in full swing. What's out right now is school. And, I've done a lot of podcasts here on Rounding the Bases regarding education, regarding mental health, the pandemic. It seems to me like every time I look up, and maybe this is all over the country, there's been so much controversy, so much politics that often get involved. It feels like every time you look up, something is going on with a school board decision and somebody's not getting along or who knows what, and sit there and figure, how do you make all of that work? And my two guests today, I think, can really give us a lot of information about so much of what I talk about on this podcast: leadership, teamwork, communication, figuring out ways to bring people into a room, sometimes that have different opinions, usually have different opinions, and they make it work. And my two guests today, who are sitting together in one nice shot, have known each other a long time. They've been working in this world a long time. They have a lot of board experience, and I'll let them explain more of that. So I'm joined right now by Deb Zila and Mike Seitz. They have a company called BOARDynamics, and there's one D in there, so it all rolls together. BOARDynamics. How did I do on that, Deb? Did I get that one right?
You did awesome. That was great.
See, I was a decent student. I was, of course, now I don't need to spell anything. We got graphics people that do that. I just need to be able to say it right and pronounce it. But good to see both of you. Deb, I've had the chance to get to know you a little bit. Mike, I've known a lot longer, not way back to our Philadelphia days of growing up, because he's got me by a few years. But we have come to know each other over the years. So, Mike, let's start with this. Before we even get into BOARDynamics, maybe give me a little bit of your background, because I feel like anytime I see something going on with my school district, which is the Blue Valley School District, that I always see your name popping up on something with this board or that board. We'll get into what you guys are doing, but Mike, give me your background first.
Sure, Joel. Grew up outside of Philadelphia a few years before you were there. Went to school at the University of Pennsylvania and began to work with the telephone company, which at the time was Bell of Pennsylvania. Since then became Bell Atlantic and is now part of Verizon. Anyway, spent 12 years there, transferred to a small town in Tennessee with what was United Telephone at the time. Became Sprint eventually. Worked for Sprint for about 20 some years, and in about 10 years ago retired. And decided at the end of chapter 2, decided that chapter 3 was going to be my intro into kind of giving back. Ran successfully for the Blue Valley School Board and began my interest in both education and mental health. And since then, have served on a number of boards, both educationally oriented and some mental health boards, and board work has been in my background for a long time, since I was really in Tennessee, when I was told that 60 or 90% of my job was customer service, and the other 50% was involved with the community and Chamber of Commerce work and economic development work, and so on. So at the end of chapter 3, which is still continuing, you have to always plan for chapter 4. And chapter 4 is the continuance of this board work. But again, trying to give a little bit of insight to boards about how they can be better. And our tagline is BOARDynamics, making boards better. So this is really, with Deb, is chapter 4.
Okay, so I know that you guys have really been working on this for a long time. It's a passion of yours. So Deb, let me get your credentials and your background so that my listeners and viewers can get a feel for who you are, and then we'll talk a little bit more about BOARDynamics. How about your background?
Okay, well, I'll kind of work backwards a little bit. I've just recently come off the Shawnee Mission School District Board of Education. Was on that for like 12 and a half years, was involved kind of as soon as my kids got into preschool, I was on boards involving their preschool with the church board, with PTA boards, with all kinds of boards. I'm originally, if we're going back to originality here, I'm originally from Montana. People say, I've never known anyone from Montana. It's like, well, when my family of 6 moved away, half the state population went down. So I understand that, but grew up in Iowa, graduated from high school in Denver, and started at Colorado State, graduated from Iowa State, along with all of my 3 older brothers. They all went to Iowa State as well. So I had kind of the Iowa roots there. My husband got a job with Black & Veatch, and we came to Kansas City and kind of did some international travel and lived in Egypt a couple of times. He's worked in Australia, in England, really in, I guess, Chile, that's where he was. Honduras, he was all over the place. Anyway, so I was sort of keeping the home fires burning, but doing a lot of board work in my time, involving with usually church and kids.
It's not easy work. I mean, the reason why I wanted you both to talk about these backgrounds is that you're now trying to tackle something which is, I mean, anyone that's been on a board knows that it's tough to get people in a room all agreeing, not that you need to agree, by the way, either, right? But getting along and being productive, and you know, our boards, and you guys will get to this, but our boards getting in their own way at sometimes. How can they go about this better? We spend so much time, Mike, and certainly on this podcast, it's one of the prevalent topics of effective leadership. Mm-hmm. And so you have all these leaders in a room who oftentimes, at least from the outside, it seems to me, are not pulling in the same direction. I think they all want good things to happen. And this past year,
I know where you're going, Joel.
I don't need to finish the question. But look, there's not a board in America, in or out of education, that hasn't had to deal with the stress of this pandemic, like the rest of us. Now you add in the politics of it, which there's always politics with school boards. We haven't seen politics in the past like this with health, or at least with a pandemic. We haven't been through something like this. So, Mike, what was this last year like? Because we got through it, by the way. I mean, it was amazing to see the graduations just get completed, and a lot of these sports seasons were able to be completed. So in many ways, we came a long, long ways, but I know it was painful for everyone involved, the kids, the teachers, the board, the parents, the whole community. From a board standpoint, how did you get through this?
That's it. First of all, you bring up a really interesting point, and if I could just add one point to that, we seem to have become somewhat polarized. The premise that Deb and I work under is that all boards and all board members want to do good work, and I think. At the end of the day, that is what will hold a board together, is the desire to do good work. This year has been, for all the boards that I've been on, very challenging. A lot of board work happens face to face. I've often said the meeting is important, but what's more important than the meeting is the 15 minutes before and the 15 minutes after the official meeting happens, because that's when personalities are able to be exposed and discussed, and you can laugh and giggle and get along. In the meeting, it's all about the meeting, but without having that personalization really makes it tough. So when you go and do a Zoom, I had 2 Zooms yesterday. Last week, I think I had 8 Zooms to do, just like you do, Joel. It's tough. It's tough to spend that first 15 minutes just schmoozing. And the year has been tough. I don't mind telling you. In a lot of ways, it taught us a whole lot. It taught Deb and I professionally, Deb and me professionally, the importance, and really sharpened our desire to help boards. And we'll get into this in a minute, but if you don't agree on your purpose and your role, then it really makes it difficult to serve. Because if you have 10 different players who believe that the purpose of the board is 5 different things, and everybody doesn't understand, not everybody agrees on or understands their role, it's chaos. The thing that I think we did at Blue Valley is, and this will be controversial because, again, we have people on all sides of the spectrum, pushing us this way, pushing us that way, is we held firm to our belief regarding science. And I'm not going to get into pandemic science. That's not my level of expertise. But we all had a desire to do the best we could for 23,000 kids, along with 4,000 employees. And as long as you hold that truth to be self-evident, it makes it a little bit easier to make the decisions. We knew at the school board, we knew at the mental health board I'm on, we knew at Baker University, I'm on the board of trustees there. We knew that some percentage of people will disagree with our decisions. But we tried to remember in every case that we're making a decision about a larger group than the individual. We're making a decision based on a community need. And as a result, it was difficult, receiving the slings and arrows, if you will, of those who want masks or those who don't want masks, those who want to be in person or those who don't want to be in person, those who want to see a mental health provider face-to-face, and those who don't want to see a mental health provider face-to-face. Was difficult. I'm on a couple of boards that are fundraising boards as well. And that was difficult as well. It's hard to raise money at a gala that's virtual. And yet, I think it renewed our belief that people, the public in general, but especially boards, really want to do good work. Nobody's out there to tear the organization down. And as a segue, that's kind of the rock that BOARDynamics is built on. Nobody wants to do bad things. Everybody wants to do good things.
Well, let's talk about that, Deb, because I think that's it. We all have different ways that we think we should get there, right? I mean, in sports terms, everybody wants to win, and people have different roles. So, you look at any boardroom, and you're going to have, hopefully, in theory, a diverse group of people that have different viewpoints. And you've seen that. I mean, we need more diversity. That's a whole different discussion. But when you have people coming from different backgrounds, you're going to have people with different opinions. That's good, right? I mean, you don't want everybody feeling the exact same way.
Right.
That's the whole point of a board. So give me a little bit of the motivation, Deb, of how the two of you kind of came up with this company, this new company that is going to specifically go out there and help and coach boards. We so often coach businesses, but you guys have seen this. Maybe those in the boardroom aren't getting that type of attention.
I think that's very true. I don't think they see professional development or that sort of thing coming together for a board like they would for the rest of the company. The company should have professional development, but the board is overlooked at times, I think. And I think people join boards. We deal with elected boards, volunteer boards, and appointed boards, not paid boards. But they come in with a preconceived idea of maybe what that job is. They might come in with a one issue wonder that they want to change when they get on this board. And that is all about knowing the purpose of the board, I think. And if you know what the purpose is, if you knew it before you got on the board, hopefully that's a big push of ours, is that people that are interested find out what that purpose is. People who are new to the board definitely find out what that purpose is and can agree to that. If they come in and they go, nope, I'm going to change everything, we've got trouble, because that is probably not the role and the purpose of what that board is supposed to do. So we try to get everybody on board to kind of figure out their purpose. And it's not really that they have to come up with it. Usually there's policies that guide that. There are bylaws of an organization that says this is what the board should do. So we're not asking them to make it up as we go, but to say, okay, let's look back at this. And does this still apply to this organization? Then you need to abide by that, or at least come within those parameters.
We talk about really four things that we try to coach a board towards. Purpose is the overriding factor. And once you get people to understand and agree on the purpose of a board, we then talk about roles, we talk about board goals, and we talk about behaviors. And the sports analogy I'll use is 2015. The Royals had a singular purpose, and that was win the World Series. The goals were to score the most runs and win the most games. Imagine, on the goal side, imagine for a minute that Salvi's responsibility was to hit home runs. That's what his goal was. The Royals may not have won if that's all he wanted to do. But he, in many cases, looked at his goals and said, my goal is to help this team any way I can, despite maybe a contract that would pay him, more money for hitting 40 home runs. They all agreed on one another's goals, and they agreed as a team on what their goals should be as a team. And the behavior is a result of agreement of purpose, roles, and goals. And we obviously saw the behavior of that team. There wasn't any strife within that team. There wasn't any disagreement. There weren't locker room and fights. No one talked anyone down. And you saw some players doing some things that you wouldn't have expected. Mm-hmm. You saw, Alex Gordon laying down a bunt sometimes. Well, he wasn't a bunter, but you know what? That's what he was asked to do in that situation. So, we looked at the 2015 Royals and said they had a purpose. They all agreed on their purpose. They had roles. They knew what their individual roles were. They agreed on them, and they were able to bend their role based on the need. We looked at their goals. They all had individual goals, but they had one team goal. And finally, their behavior was a result of that agreement. There, I did the baseball analogy.
There you go.
No, it was good. And the behavior to me is a big part of the culture. And it's not, culture is not strictly made up by behavior, but I don't think that you can have the culture you want without the right type of behavior. And certainly everything that you're talking about. So before I get to my baseball theme questions, Deb, I'll ask you that, because behavior can be a tough one. Once you figure out the purpose, I think that's got to be a big chunk of it. We're all always looking to figure out our purpose. And then if you can get everybody on page with the goals and the roles, okay, if they accept those behaviors, we all have our own behaviors. How do you go about that and all of this in terms of communication, in terms of getting everybody on the same page?
Communication is key. That is an absolute key. And usually you kind of work backwards. If you've got some behaviors on your board that you were wishing were maybe not quite as strong or divergent from what the rest of the board is doing, you kind of work back and you say, okay, let's start at the beginning. Let's start with purpose. Why are you here? And what are the ensuing roles from that purpose that you should be doing? And is everybody on board doing that? With our process, we start with a survey, so we know what's going on in their heads. What's your perception of your role? What is your perception of your purpose? What makes you most proud of being on this board? What is the communication level? Because if they don't feel like communication is coming to all board members equally, there can be some strife there, and people will act out because of that. So communication is a huge element of all of that. And that's a question too that we ask on that survey. So it's very enlightening, I think, when we see the results of that.
True of the boardroom, true of the locker room, and I think everything in between. Here are the baseball themed questions, and I'll let either one of you, I know that you know them in advance, so wherever you want to go, whether it's with BOARDynamics or anything else. Biggest home run hit. Who wants to tackle that? Deb.
I think our biggest home run was Mike and I are both, we got acquainted doing school board work and all the associations and the networking that happens within as a member of a school board. I think our biggest home run is that we have successfully dealt with a chamber board. We have the county commission advisory boards possibly that are going to be looking at us, city councils. So it's all types of different boards. We have not yet had a contact with a school board, which we thought was going to be our sweet spot. But actually that I think is how we are coming to see that all boards really function kind of the same way. They have different purposes, they have different bylaws, policies, whatever guides them, but you get them all on board with that purpose and life is going to be good from there on.
Well, calling all school boards, looking for some help in consulting and the coaching.
Help school boards too. So
yes, there is some experience, many years of experience between Deb and Mike on the school board side. How about for BOARDynamics or wherever you want to go, a swing and a miss, and what did you learn from it?
I'll give you a swing and a miss. This is one that I'll never forget.
Is that knife still in your heart over there?
It is. We decided early on to look at people that we really respect in this space and ask for some mentorship. We met with one of our mentors early, maybe a year and a half ago, and presented what we were doing and how we were going to do it. And the response that we got was, at the end of the discussion, we had given our song and dance, and this individual had given us some feedback. Maybe you try this, maybe you try that. And then at the end, she called us a garage band. And understand, we were kind of in the fledgling kind of stage at that point. We were looking for some direction of where to go, but to say garage band it really hurt. And from that point on, I said, we're never going to be a garage band again. We're never going to have that stigma of being a garage band. There's a level of professionalism that we're going to maintain. And I think the lesson that we learned, it was a lesson that we all know, but sometimes forget, is that there's always room for growth. You can always get a little bit better. You can always sharpen your podcast. You can always sharpen your skills. You can always sharpen your presentation. You can always sharpen your thought process, your philosophy. And that really kicked us into high gear. That was a strike. That was a swing and a miss. The thing that we tried to remember after that, and I have a hard time doing it, is don't let that one swing and a miss affect your next at bat.
Right.
Yep.
And as a result, we've had a few other misses. We've had lots of hits.
Right.
And the hits, you remember the hits, but I will never forget that swing and a miss, and I'll never let it happen to us again.
Well, that's how you learn from it. And the last baseball theme question, small ball. That's what I wrote the book about. What are the little things that add up to the home runs for you guys?
I think one of the things that we approach every single board for itself. We want to know what it's about. We do have kind of a template or a process anyway that we go through, but every single one of them is tailored to that board. We don't come in with the PowerPoint, the pat PowerPoint of this is our dog and pony show. Have a great day. See you later. It's really, we really have a conversation with the board and try to really get to the meat of the matter that's for them.
And personalization is important to us, Joel. Every board's different.
Right.
Every board has a different makeup, a different set of issues, a different set of things that they want to correct. And the way we approach it is we're not the sage on the stage. We don't come in with all the answers. We ask a board, where are your issues? And I'll use the watch analogy. We don't come in and take their watch, tell them what time it is, and give them their watch back. We come in, we help them understand what time their watch says and say, what time would you like to see it? What time do you want it to be? And then we help them set the watch. And that's different from a lot of consultants who walk in and have a pat, like Deb said, a pat set of PowerPoints and slides, and it's the same thing over and over again. So for us, small ball is personalizing every engagement to that board and making sure that when we leave, they know a couple of things. They know what they said, they know what they agreed to, specifically what they agreed to. They know when the expectation is of each other, when that will be completed. And they also know that they can call us and we'll be there for them.
Right.
Customization is key. Okay, 4 final questions as we round the bases for Deb Zila and Mike Seitz, BOARDynamics. First one, we'll start. Let's start a little bit light here. I mentioned this to you before you came on, Mike. How many graduations did you attend this year as a board member?
I attended 7 graduations this year, and am proud to say in 11 years on the board have never missed a graduation. So if you take that 7 times 11, that's 77 graduations over the last 11 years. The number of handshakes, I'm going to approximate at 4,000, probably 4,000 this year. And whether they're fist bumps, handshakes,
Right.
Head nods,
Chest bumps.
no chest bumps.
You're too old for that, Mike. You don't want those football kids coming up there and knocking you out. But the reason why I brought that up, and I knew the numbers would be fun. And by the way, that's a lot of sitting through the same ceremony over and over again. Although I got to say that the speeches from the kids are always so inspirational.
Yeah.
But this year was different. I mean, there was such, I was at the Blue Valley North graduation, and there was such a feeling of pride beyond the, hey, my kid graduated, or hey, I graduated, but about how far we've come. And I'm assuming you felt that too. I mean, what a year it's been.
We did. I think, for the board, for the administration, for the teachers, for the kids, and for the public, graduation was almost I don't want to say a reopening, but almost taking us back to a time when things were a little bit more normal.
Yeah.
Now, we things are not normal everywhere, and I certainly don't want to minimize, the status, if you will. But I think people needed a release, and I think there was a level of not relief necessarily, but exhilaration and pride that we as a society, amidst all of the strife and disagreement, we as a society were able to weather this together. We had all the entire community at these events, and I think to a person they were proud.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to describe it. All right, second question. Either of you could tackle this with your, certainly your education experience, and then I'll move on to some other things. But what, I know it's different wherever you go, but what do you think 2022 looks like in terms of schools? I know that things are still up in the air, but it's got to be better than it was last year.
I think it will be better than last year. And we've got the herd immunization going on, hopefully. And I think it will be much better for teachers. Everybody wants to get kids back in school. Parents, students, teachers, everybody wants that again. I think it was a great lesson learned. It was unprecedented for schools and boards and communities to try to figure it out, parents to try to figure out their situation with kids being at home possibly. So it was an experience that will probably leave us changed in some way. I don't know if there's a new normal yet, but I think that whatever that new normal is, I think people will embrace it if it has some semblance to what was normal.
I think, just to add to that, if I may, I think the idea that every child learns a little bit differently was really driven home. I'm not an educator. I'm a business guy, and now I help boards. But when I listen to our teachers, when I listen to our administrators, every child learns differently, and I think that will help. I think that'll help every child. We talk about personalized learning, but I think the move towards personalized learning will be advanced significantly going forward as a result of understanding that not every kid can learn in front of a computer. Not every child needs a teacher in the front of the room. So I think that will become very evident, and I think that'll push personalized learning, what we've learned in the past year, forward quicker than it would ordinarily.
Yeah, not all that different than what you were talking about with the boards. We so often forget that with our kids, the customization piece to it. And so I do think that there will be so many good things that come out of the sacrifice and the lessons learned last year. Third question, we'll go more lighthearted before we finish on board dynamics. You got one half of you grew up, at least initially, in Montana, and the other one in Philadelphia. I mean, couldn't be more similar, right?
So we meet in the middle in Kansas, right?
But you meet in the middle in Kansas City or in Kansas or on either side of the state line for that matter. So just quick question to each of you. What is it about this part of the country, the region, that has kept you here for so long?
Well, the schools. We've been talking about the schools intermittently here, and the schools are wonderful. I think the Midwest people are just great people, warm people to grow up with. I can't speak for the East Coast, but that has kind of a stigma to it, I must say, as far as being warm and friendly and warm fuzzies and all.
Mike's a warm and fuzzy friendly kind of guy, though.
Yeah, but he got transferred, so it's okay. He's a transplant. We'll accept that.
That's coming from a guy who is from Jersey.
Right.
I think Deb's right. When we moved here in 1997. And my daughter was a sophomore in high school, and I said, okay, after she had been in 9 schools at that point, in 9 years, and I said, okay, we're not going to move anymore. You kids are going to graduate from high school here. And I made that commitment to my kids. My wife and I have looked and said, we would love to move to the beach. We would love to move to the mountains. At the end of the day, it's people like you, Joel, and I'm not trying to suck up. It's people like my partner that you don't find everywhere. The quality of life here is just superb. The schools are great. Don't get me wrong. It's fun to live here. And frankly, we made a decision not to move long ago. I could have moved 10 years ago, and chose not to, because this is home.
Right. My parents actually lived here. I think between my freshman year in college and my sophomore year, they moved to Kansas City and lived in Shawnee. And I was here during the summers with school, and I thought, what a neat city. I'd not been to Kansas City before. And I go, it's got that small town feel, almost that warm kind of feel to it, but it's got professional sports to it. I mean, it's got everything that makes it a great place to live. So, and here I am back here again. So
I love it. All right, the walk-off question. Mike, you talked about the chapters of life and kind of moving now into chapter 4. For both of you, Board Dynamics, you obviously have a passion for helping consult, coach, and make boards better, functioning more smoothly, and everything that we have discussed. What are the long-term goals? I'm not saying this is the final chapter either, but it's certainly the next big one for you. So what are the long-term goals with Board Dynamics, guys?
Shall we talk about the building?
Sure. Yeah. Mike always talks about the building with our name on top. So I guess he's got very high aspirations.
And we say that jokingly. At the end of the day, for Board Dynamics, what we'd like to have happen is when a board, whether they're in strife or whether they have strife in their life or not, we would like people to say, Deb and Mike know their stuff. They've spent 75 years combined doing board stuff. And we would like to talk to them. We have no aspirations of becoming the Microsoft or the Apple of the board coaching business. We have we have a little business plan and a strategic plan that we developed. And our why, we have 3 items on our why. The first is, let's help some boards. Let's help make boards better. The second one is, let's have fun. Let's have fun doing it. And the third is, if we can make a little money, that'd be nice too.
That'd be good, yeah.
It's a very simple philosophy.
Yeah, that's never a bad thing either. So if people want to be able to find out more about BOARDynamics, any boards out there, any people on boards or corporations, whatever it is, the easiest way at this point, there'll be a website coming fairly soon, but the easiest way at this point is just jump onto LinkedIn and search for Michael Seitz or Deb Zila, Z-I-L-A. Each one of them are the co-founders of BOARDynamics, BOARDynamics. I get that, Deb?
Good job, you did it. Yes.
Good.
It's actually easier to it flows easier than it does when you write it, because you're just like you want to get that second word in there. The D joins Board and Dynamics, just as the way Mike Seitz and Deb Zila have joined forces to help boards make better decisions, work better together, and everything that goes along with teamwork and purpose and all the great topics that we have discussed today. It's always good to be able to catch up with you guys, whether it be at the coffee shop or whether at coffee house, whatever. We used to do that back in the day, right? And then whether it's virtually and on a podcast. Good luck. Thanks for all the work you're doing with BOARDynamics, and I appreciate you both spending time on Rounding the Bases.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, and keep up the great work. We love watching you.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Deb.
Have a good day.
Take care.